How can you plan intentional professional learning? Throughout the year, we have hosted several webinars where we've talked about ways to ensure that your evaluation process that you're providing in your district is intentional, that you are making informed decisions based on data. And we've specifically addressed, how are you designing that intention? And so today we're going to expand on that and we're going to talk about how you can create a professional development plan or professional learning plan that is also intentional. So how does your evaluation process impact students? Because we assume we're doing professional development to make our teachers better. We want our teachers to be better so that our students will learn more. How does it impact goals and data collection? What's the purpose of doing an evaluation? And are your steps and documents in your evaluation process meeting your needs and providing the information that you want? And then we're going to take all of those things from your intentional evaluation plan to build that intentional professional learning plan. So let's start by talking about instructional leadership. Professional development sessions are part of a continuous learning cycle. So we're going to be going through all of the steps of that cycle at different points in time in your professional learning plan. Today, we're going to spend time discussing ways that a district leader, like a professional development director, curriculum coordinator, other instructional roles as well. You may hold a different role than that, but someone who's at the district level, how might they identify professional learning needs from a district lens? How do you start the process of planning that professional development? In my previous district, I was part of that team that planned our summer development. We had a week-long professional development. We called it summer camp. And we planned together as a group, people from different departments that were all on the instructional side of the house. And we would get together and we had a wall in the room where we would post different categories and everybody would put up Post-its of sessions that they wanted to offer in each of those categories. And that's kind of how we got started putting together our summer catalog. But the question is, how do you pick the categories? Are you picking those categories with intention? And I will admit, sometimes our categories were based on what did we do last year? What were the categories that we've had before? Are we repeating the same thing again? Is it that we're doing what we've always done situation? Sometimes the categories would change a little bit based on district initiatives or some new program that we had going on, and that's meeting a need. But the best case scenario is when the categories are actually based on needs supported by data. So if we do the research and we find out specifically what are those needs and we develop our categories from there, we're going to be more intentional with our plan. A little later, we're going to talk about some specific types of data that you can use and where you can get that data to help determine the needs and make those decisions as you're starting to plan. It's also important to talk about school leadership, principals, assistant principals, instructional coaches, and how they might address professional learning at the campus level, because that is a much more personal connection. Campus PD might be more targeted than that at the district level. So it might include mentoring a specific teacher or a group of teachers, maybe all your new teachers, maybe teachers in a specific area that's struggling. Their needs might be different from other needs, even on your own campus. And you might have some additional data sources to consider. You might have coaching conversations or mentor-mentee relationships. You might even have their area of refinement or reinforcement from observations, which you could have for other teachers as well. So there's lots of different kinds of data that might be included at the campus level. And also campus needs might be different. The data might be different for one campus from another, which determines their needs. And that might be because of campus population. It might be because of the experience of the teaching staff. There are lots of things that could be much more specific at the campus level than if you're planning at the district level. But all of that can be intentional and all of it can be based on data that you can find and evaluate. So let's talk about designing that intentional professional learning. What does your current process include? And if it doesn't include all of these things, let's consider those as we go through the process. Sometimes we miss the forest for the trees when we're looking at evaluation data. And even when we're looking at professional learning data and planning, we're looking at the individual teachers and did they meet their deadlines, and do I have documents on everybody, and did everybody write a goal and turn it in on time? And we miss the bigger picture, which is the trends. What does it look like overall? How am I evaluating that big picture data? So are you including multiple measures, and then are you tagging those measures so that you get feedback for everyone on the same things across the whole year? Because we want to make sure we're looking at all of the pieces and not just one thing to get the answers that we need. Are you asking the right questions? Think about your walkthroughs. Are you getting the information that you need from walkthrough data? Sometimes the language of TEKS is not specific or granular enough to give us the exact things we need to focus on with professional learning. So you can create custom walkthroughs and have that data as part of the information that you're using to make your decisions. And that may be something that you add to your intentional evaluation process to give you the intentional information that you need for your professional learning process. Are you analyzing observation data, and how are you analyzing observation data? Are you looking at just overall scores, or are you identifying low performing dimensions? Are there, again, trends and areas that you can see that we need to work on as a whole, in addition to maybe some coaching for individual teachers as needed? And then same thing is true with goal data. Sometimes we look at goals and say, okay, everybody has one, check, everybody finished it on time, check, and we need a little bit more information than that. What are the goals based on? Hopefully, performance data is informing goals or helping teachers determine how to write their goals. And then the goals can inform your professional learning plan. If I have teachers who have a goal, I need to make sure that I'm supporting them with professional development, professional learning. So those are some of the things to consider as you're beginning to plan. This slide is a very specific list, a very detailed list of elements of a professional learning plan. It comes from Learning Forward, and there's a link at the bottom of the slide. You'll have the slides in your follow-up email. So if you're fast and furiously trying to write down the link, you will see it again. You'll get the slides when you get your email after the session is over, 24 hours after the session is over. But this kind of outlines all the different things to consider when you're building a professional learning plan from start to finish, like it goes all the way through evaluation and how am I going to see and measure my success. Today, we're mostly focusing on needs analysis and figuring out what we can do to determine what our professional learning should be. Okay, so what do you need to analyze? What are all of the things that you need to focus on? We talked about the steps of your evaluation process, but we also talked about students, that we want data that's used for professional learning to eventually trickle down to improved learning for students. So what do we need to analyze to get started? One thing that you can look at is using AWARE to find your focus TEKS. So we frequently look at this information, and we look at individual teachers or individual students and where they are. But if I look at this, which is a list of by campus results from the 2022 STAR Math Grade 8, I can see one row here, 8.7, that is primarily a low performing standard across my district. 8.8 is also primarily a low performing standard. So I have some that are fairly high performing standards and some that are predominantly low. I might want to take a deeper look at what those standards are, how are we covering those standards, and what strategies or activities or suggestions can we share with teachers in professional learning that would be a new way to teach that particular standard, to cover that standard and help our students to do better in that area. So knowing what your focus TEKS are both at the campus level and at the district level will help you to know, can I do some targeted standards-based professional learning for my teachers? And it would be based on the data that you got from your assessments. Now, this particular one is from a STAR test, but you can also pull this same report and get data on any district assessments or campus-based assessments that you offer in your district. So anything in Aware, you would be able to pull a quick, this is a quick view by learning standards to see where are my high performing, low performing standards. What do I need to focus on helping my teachers do better, teach more in depth, whatever the case may be, but what can I do to help my teachers to help the students in these areas? In addition to looking at student data, I also want to know, what are my lowest performing dimensions in t-test? So how are my teachers doing and where are my areas of need there? This is a detailed analysis report from Strive. I'm just using the detailed analysis that we have built into the system. This one is viewing by schools. So you can see the rows are displaying my school names, columns are displaying dimensions, and then I have the averages for each campus in each one of those dimensions. And just by looking across that, I can see of this group, now there's some more over to the right, but of this group, 1.2 is my lowest performing dimension across all, if not most, if not all of my campuses. So I can find the information that I need. I could search this if I was at a campus level and I was looking at all one campus instead of the whole district. I could look at this by grade level instead of by campus, or by subject area, or by appraiser, or by year. There are lots of different ways that I could display it so that instead of campus names over on the left, I would be looking at other criteria and looking at the data broken down in different ways. So you can use that information to determine, how does this align with what I saw with my students, the student data? It may or may not, but it also gives me a way to focus on what the teachers are struggling with, as well as what my students are struggling with. I also have the ability to look at goals. So what did my teachers write their goals on? How am I going to support them with their goals? We have something in our system that's called legacy analysis. If you go, it tells you over on the left, oops, sorry about that. Over on the right, if you scroll to the bottom of the analysis screen, you'll see a link that says Goals and Professional Learning Analysis, also called Legacy Analysis. And if you click on that, you can select the framework and dimensions that you want to analyze, and then you can choose either goals, professional learning, or you can choose both. So I'm looking at just goals information here, and it's going to tell me for each dimension, how many of my teachers, what percentage and what number included that dimension in their goal. And so I would want to find those goals that had a higher percentage and make sure that I've got some professional learning that's going to support teachers as they're working on that goal. So this is something that they have identified, possibly with the help of their administrators, as a need for them to work on. I want to support them through that need, and to do that support, I have to know where those areas of need are. So I can find out about their goals by using our legacy analysis tool. I can also look at areas of reinforcement and refinement, and these are identified either as part of the observation process. So they're identified usually in combination, teacher and appraiser working together to identify, based on the evidence, what they should be working on for reinforcement and refinement. This view that you're seeing now uses our document summary analysis, and we have a document that is just for the post-conference. If your district is using that one, that's what I pulled here. The post-conference document shows just reinforcement and refinement, and so that's what I'm looking at in this particular view. But if your district is not using this document, the one that's called the post-conference document, and you do have area of reinforcement and refinement somewhere else in another document, you could still use document summary and scroll down to that section in order to see the area of reinforcement and refinement. And when I float my mouse over, as you can see in this image, when you float your mouse over any of those bars, it will give you the actual number and percentage of teachers who have been identified as needing to work on that particular dimension. So I could find my areas that have the highest level and maybe make sure that I'm looking at that when I plan my summer professional development or my fall professional development throughout the year. When I'm planning, am I considering those things that teachers are supposed to be working on? Am I giving them opportunities to grow in that area that has been identified for them? And then I can also pull document summary analysis for walkthroughs. And in this case, I spoke earlier about custom walkthroughs, maybe creating a walkthrough that's going to give you more specific information. You'll notice it says instructional activities, and activities is one of the dimensions in TEKS, but it doesn't have that dimension number at the top of it. And it has a list of specific types of instructional activities. You might have one that has instructional strategies or activity types. You might have one that has assessment strategies. Whatever it is that you want to measure and find out how your teachers are doing it, how often are we seeing it, you can create a custom walkthrough and you can pull data from this. You can also have walkthroughs that are done by instructional coaches rather than done by the evaluators. So it's not necessarily an evaluative walkthrough, it's an instructional feedback walkthrough. It can still provide data that you use to determine the needs that you have on your campuses or throughout your district in terms of what professional development you should be offering or what areas you should be considering for professional development. So this is sort of a combination. What is your intentional evaluation process? What are you measuring? And then how can you use that data to inform your professional learning? And then we also have where I started in my story with sometimes our categories were based on what we had offered in the past. And sometimes that's a good starting place. And you may have some things that do need to be offered again this year. You can run this report, it's the custom PD report. Campus administrators do not have access to the custom PD report. So those of you who are at the district level, you could print this out and provide this information to your campus leaders if this would be helpful to them. They can run a report of what their teachers have taken, but they won't see this report of everything that has been offered. You can filter it out. So you'll see in my example here, I filtered it out for specific dimensions. Each dimension is assigned a background number in the system. So this one, 3.2, will have a number like maybe 47 would be the number that shows up here. It doesn't tell you the actual name after you've selected it. It just shows you the background name, but you can put in multiples. So the standards that I have selected are activities, which is probably 41 right there, and then differentiation and managing student behavior. Those are the three dimensions that I was searching for. And this is the report that I got that shows those three dimensions and all of the sessions that we offered that were related to those dimensions. So I can kind of see, if there's a dimension that I'm looking for that I saw in a lot of the goals, or I saw it in a lot of the areas of reinforcement or refinement, or I saw it on that list of low performing dimensions, and I run this report and we didn't offer it last year, and that's not something we've done in the past, that's something I probably want to consider going forward. So I can see how have I done with those same dimensions, or I could just not filter at all and let it show me every dimension and how much we offered for each of those dimensions to kind of get a gauge of what we've done in the past. Do you need to offer some of these courses again? Probably so. There may be some courses in here that are compliance based, and you're going to need to offer those every year because that's a need for your teachers as well to get the training that's required for them to have every year. But then some of them may not be areas of concern right now. And so it may be something that we could take a few of those off the schedule and put on some that are going to address the areas of need that we have right now. And I would also probably want to search and see, are there any sessions in here? And I might want to search for the activities sessions, maybe the differentiation sessions, but can I tell from the title, do they meet the needs of the specific areas of student need? So if I was looking for something that was math-based for that algebra, or it was, I think, 8th grade math, that I was looking at the STAR results, and I would want to see, do we have something that's going to cover some of those standards where the students were struggling? If not, that's something I might want to use some of these sessions for. So I want to make sure that I'm offering something for everyone, and I'm offering those things that are required, but also that I'm offering the things that will help us get better in the areas where we're struggling. Any questions about the data that we can look at?
We have not had any posted questions at this time, Paige.
Okay. So which of these data sources are you currently using? If you would like to share in the chat, are you using any? Are you using all? Were some of these new things that you didn't know were out there? Let us know where you are right now, what you've been doing, or maybe what you're thinking about doing. Okay, so we have some who have viewed aware assessments, which is good. That's a great place to figure out what you need. Somebody said A&E, aware and the PD report. Again, good sources of information. I haven't seen anybody say legacy analysis. So I'm thinking that one may be not as familiar to everyone, that it's still out there. It's just down at the bottom of the analysis page, and it does give you that goals information. And to me, knowing what teachers have identified, self-identified for their goals, and say self-identified, but it's in conjunction with their evaluator, that's helpful information as well when you're planning PD. All right, thank you to those who shared. That kind of helps us know what's going on out in the districts. And now let's talk about the next steps. Once you've identified all of that information, what can you do with it? How do you get your professional development plan formulated, and where do you go from here? So the next step would be, well, actually, this is kind of a jump. There'd be some steps in between data analysis, collecting all of the data, and actually building the courses. You would want to analyze that data, compare, see if you're seeing the same things from multiple sources, identify your priorities based on what you found in those needs. And then once you've gotten down to the point where you're ready to build courses in the system, then you would want to get to where we are on this slide. So you're going to build those courses, and you're going to tag the dimensions for searching and tracking. So as you go in and you build a course in Strive, I'll select a course, and then when I go over to the setup tab, there's a place for dimensions. You'll also see this dimension screen when you first start building the course, before you actually get into it. As part of that, I'm picking the date and I'm doing those things. It's going to pop up the window for you to select the dimensions. If you didn't do it then and you want to go back and do it after the fact, you can always go back to the setup tab and get to the course dimensions. Or if you thought of one that, okay, I wasn't thinking about it when I made the course, but it also applies to this dimension, you can go in and make those changes. I would recommend that you always add in professional development as one of the dimensions checked. And I'll show you a little bit later on a screen where that can be viewed in the summative panel by the appraiser. And so it's helpful for them to have it there. But then I would also want the specific dimensions that are related to the content of this session. So this is instructional strategies. I tied it to activities and differentiation. You may have some other things that you would think applied to that as well, and that's fine. Kind of depends on what the content is going to be, what all is going to be covered. But I would definitely want to have my content tags and also my overall professional development tag so that I can see that information in the summative panel. Important to know that multiple frameworks can be tagged to a single course. So I could pick the t-test dimension, but if I have another framework that was built for specific needs of my district, I could also tag for those other dimensions as well. So on the appraisal side, teachers can only be in one framework at a time. So if they're t-tests, that's all you have. But on the professional development side, you can tag to more than one framework. So I could pick a couple of things from t-tests, and then I could also tag it to something that was a framework identified by my district. And a framework is just sort of the backbone of standards or criteria that you're using to measure something. So it could be something that was just for your district, or it could be something that comes from an outside consulting source that you're using. But you can have multiple frameworks tagged. It doesn't have to be just t-tests. So what happens next? Well, there has to be some training or communication with your teachers so that they can find the sessions. You're creating sessions designed to meet their needs based on the data, but they need to be able to find those sessions. And there are a couple ways that you can help them do that. One, you can determine categories and you can communicate with them to search for things by category. So I've created categories in my demo district here for data analysis, evaluation process, instructional strategies. You can have any categories that you want, and you can communicate that with your teachers. Curriculum coordinators could say, we are putting all of our sessions in the instructional strategies category, or you might have a category called curriculum and instruction. Whatever you want to build, you can do that, and then you can communicate with teachers what to search for. They can also search by keyword, by typing something in when they go into the course catalog. And then for me, one of the most powerful searches is to search by dimensions. So if I know that I wrote my goal about activities and differentiation, then that's what I'm going to search for in the catalog. I'm going to go to the frameworks, I'm going to pick t-tests, and I'm going to pick the dimensions that I put in for my goal and find professional development that's specifically related to what I need, or for my area of reinforcement or refinement, or for something else that I have a concern about. So I can search by dimension, and if those sessions were tagged when the courses were built, then I'll be able to find those courses by searching this way. Again, teachers sometimes need a little help knowing this. We do have information in our online help guide that shows teachers how to search in the course catalog, and you can share that information with them or communicate in whatever is the most effective way for your team so that they know that they can look for those sessions and how y'all have tagged them, how you've categorized them to help them find them when it's time for them to look. So once teachers have found those sessions, well, I forgot about this slide, sorry. They may also take some sessions outside your district. They might go to the service center. They might find an online course. They might have some other options for taking professional development other than the things that you offer. When they come back, they can request credit for those outside sessions. So they can go in and put that information in. It will add it to their portfolio. It will also give you some information, and they can tag the sessions that they attended to the dimensions that are related. So again, if I went and took something at the service center because it was related to my goal or to my area of reinforcement or refinement, I'm going to indicate that by tagging that framework when I request credit. And there's also a place in the requesting credit process for them to upload a certificate. So they can, if they got something from the service center, they can take a picture of it, scan it, whatever, and upload it into the system so that you have some documentation that they completed that course. And then they can also add that professional learning to their goals. So if I wrote a goal that was related to specific dimensions, and I attended professional learning to help me with that goal, I can use that professional learning as evidence of my work on that goal. So when I go into my goal statement, I can click on the Add Evidence button. I can select from the choices of evidence types, and evidence can be anecdotal evidence through a text box. It can be a file upload. It can be a link to a website, or it can be a professional portfolio or workshop portfolio entry. So professional development. So I picked that evidence type, and then that's going to give me a drop down list here of all the courses that I have taken. I'll choose the course that's related to my goal that I want to attach to this particular goal. And then I'm going to use the description box to describe and reflect. So what was it about? What did I learn? What did I do with that learning? How did it help? How is it contributing to the work that I'm doing on my goal? So I can tie that professional learning back to the goal that may have been part of the reason that that professional development experience existed in the first place, because I wrote a goal and other people wrote a goal. Y'all saw it, put it in the catalog. Now I've taken that course and it's helped me to progress. So it kind of takes us for full circle. And then the progress can be tracked in a variety of ways. So both teachers and appraisers can see a screen that has these tabs. This is the teacher screen because it's saying my professional learning. I can see the enrolled courses, which are things that I have either coming up or that have not been completed by the instructor. So, excuse me. This first one was an e-course. I enrolled in it back in December. I may have finished my work on it, but the instructor has not closed out the course, so it's still showing in enrolled courses. Once it's been marked completed, it will move over to the completed courses tab. And then that will show everything for this instructional year in the completed courses. Anything I've gotten credit for during this instructional year will be there. And then anything that I got credit for in previous years will be available in my portfolio. So it'll be my entire professional learning history. I say previous years, the portfolio will also show this year, but it will include everything. Whereas the completed courses is just for this instructional year and enrolled courses is just for things I haven't yet finished. I can see this screen, and my appraiser will also be able to see this screen. On the appraiser view, there are two tabs to the left for archived goals and archived evaluations, but then they'll see these three tabs. They'll be moved over to the right just a little bit, but they will be able to see these three tabs and look at the professional development by teacher if I want to look at it that way. I can also look in the summative panel. So, and I mentioned this earlier, this is one of the reasons that I like to suggest selecting dimension 4.3 in addition to the content dimensions for the specific course, because as an appraiser, when I'm going in to do the summative, I can look at individual dimensions and see the professional development that they took for that dimension. But if I want to see their whole professional development history while I'm doing the summative without having to leave that document, all I have to do is look at dimension 4.3 in the summative panel, and it will show me all of the sessions that I signed up for. In these two cases, I apparently did not attend and credit was denied, but in this one I did earn credit. And if I scroll down, I have a few others that I earned credit for. So that professional development history will show up in the summative panel if they're all tagged to the 4.3. And so that's why I think that's very helpful for appraisers to be able to see it all at the same time that I'm doing the summative. What should I see as a result? Before we move on to this, are there any questions that we have hanging out?
Oh, we are good to move forward, Paige.
All right. So what do I see as a result? We've done some planning, we've done some monitoring, we've shared with teachers how they can access and find the professional development. Hopefully they took the courses as we planned them to meet their specific needs. And now what? So effective professional learning should result in changes to teacher practices. How will you know if that happened? You may see changes in teachers' goals based on things that they learned. Where are they going to take that from here? What's their goal going to be for next year? How are they going to build on that knowledge that they have? You may see evidence from the professional learning in classroom observations. The ratings may change. Some of those low performing dimensions may improve. There should be evidence of professional learning in PLC conversations. When teachers are talking with other teachers, are they sharing what they learned? And are you hearing those conversations? You might also see the results of professional learning in lesson planning. Are they using additional instructional strategies or changing the way they write their lesson plans to include some of the things that they have learned? And then you might also see it in the types of assessment that are being utilized by your teachers. Are they doing different types of formative assessment to get more data as they're going through the lesson cycle? Are they writing different kinds of quizzes and different kinds of performance assessments to learn more about the depth of knowledge that their students have? So those are things that you might see reflected in teacher practices as a result of the professional learning. And also, you might see some things related to student outcomes, especially if there was professional development that was tied to specific standards. If we identified those TEKS where students are struggling and offered professional development in those areas, then maybe the teachers are better armed to go back in the classroom and address those particular standards and help the students. And so there may be some increase in student performance based on that professional development. Lessons and strategies, again, we would see that change. Monitored learning. So are the teachers keeping closer tabs on some of the areas that they have learned more about? And then you can also look at student assessments on specific standards before and after a professional development initiative. And do you see that trickle down change from what teachers learned to what they implemented in their classroom to how the students learned to how the students performed on assessments? And then the last thing that you can use to kind of see where you stand is the teacher performance and student growth correlation report. This is data that comes from the summative documents. So in your evaluation process, this is something that you can use after summatives to see how things are going. It's going to take student growth information, which has to be entered into the summative document in order to get this report. So there is a place for you to collect that student performance data. Appraisers can add that in a couple of different ways that can happen. There are some articles in our online help guide about collecting student growth percentages. There is, if you're using our student portfolios, there is now an import button that will bring those student growth ratings from the teacher's portfolio into the summative document. And then the appraiser can look at that data, verify it, and leave it or adjust it as needed. But that's where this information comes from, is the summative document. And once it's been input into the summative document, you'll be able to run this report. It's a scatter plot that what I would expect to see is kind of a diagonal-ish line from lower left to upper right that would have a correlation between how my teachers are doing and how my students are doing. When we have some outliers, like these guys over here are outliers, they're at 0% on student growth and at a 4.5 on t-test. So a really high t-test score, but 0 for student growth. I'm going to guess that either there was a mistake in putting the numbers in, or maybe this was a non-tested subject, and so we don't have any data there for the students. Same is true over here. I've got some outliers on the other end where it's really high on the student growth score, way higher than maybe for the teachers. I'm going to wonder, anytime I see 100% on student growth, that always makes me just a little suspicious. That's probably just my nature, but I'm going to want to check those out and see, how did they get to be 100% on student growth? Especially, I would expect my teachers to be really excellent if my students are at 100% achievement. But I can compare that. If this were a live report, I could click on any one of these dots and it would tell me the teacher's name. and it would tell me their overall average on the TPES dimensions, and also their students' overall student growth percentage of students who met or exceeded is what you would see here. So those who met or exceeded compared to the teacher's overall performance. And that gives you a lot of information about things that I would expect to see, things that I didn't expect. And it won't tell me everything there is to know, like there could be a valid reason why some of these outliers exist, but it does tell me things that I could look at to see how our performance and our teacher performance and our student growth are correlated, and have we seen improvement on that based on a conscientious and intentional professional learning plan.